Hi, I'm Thomas Phelps, Senior Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Chief Information Officer for Laserfiche. I'm delighted to have two luminaries in the cybersecurity industry join us to discuss what's top of mind for many of you. What's going on in the state of cybersecurity? What are the risks from ransomware and state-sponsored cyber attacks? And what does it mean to all of us personally? So joining me will be Jay Chaudhry, CEO, Chairman, and Founder of Zscaler, and George Kurtz, co-founder and CEO of CrowdStrike. First up is Jay Chaudhry. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate the opportunity.
We're very happy to have you. You know, Jay, when I first met you at the Gartner Evanta Summit in December 2018, and that was hosted by Innovate at UCLA, I had wished that I ran out after your closing remarks and bought Zscaler stock. Back then, I believe Zscaler was trading at about $40 a share, and now you're at over $200 a share. I know in your last quarterly earnings report that you reported a 52% growth in earnings. In the first quarter of 2021, you now have a market cap of about roughly $29 billion. You know, Jay, can you tell us about Zscaler and why is the market so bullish on your security company?
So first of all, I'll say that markets do what they do. I don't focus on markets. I focus on my customers. My customers are happy. They buy more. Everything works out pretty well. Okay. So that's my attitude. Now, having said that, I'll explain that the market is fundamentally changing. Mobile and cloud is becoming the norm. The security solutions that are designed for the world of data center no longer work. It's like comparing DVD players versus Netflix streaming service. To do the new solution, you need a clean new architecture. Just like Salesforce disrupted legacy Siebel software, Workday disrupted legacy PeopleSoft, we are doing the same to traditional legacy network security. So enterprises love us. They're buying us to displace the old stuff so they could enable the digital transformation.
I see. You know, last year, Jay, Laserfiche pivoted to work from home the work of March 9th in response to the pandemic. And many of the global audience watching us today also had to rapidly shift to work from home. And I've told my CIO peers that we could not have done this without Zscaler. Many companies use VPN, but we went the route of replacing that with ZPA. And because so many of our employees are working remotely, we're not just managing devices and users on a corporate network at Laserfiche. I mean, whether we like it or not, the internet, the entire internet now is inherently part of our corporate network. So that kind of leads me to zero trust. You know, what is zero trust network access we're all hearing about? And from your perspective, how does it mitigate having this larger attack surface with so many of us now working from home?
Absolutely, yes. So if I contrast the two models, the old model was we were in our castle and we built a moat around it. Inside, everything is great because your applications were inside the data center, your castle. Your users were in the office. Wonderful. Now, applications have moved to the cloud. Users have left for greener pastures. The castle is empty. And people are still buying firewalls and the like to build the moat. What's needed is a new architecture, what we call a zero trust architecture. So what's zero trust? Zero trust says don't trust users being on the network so they can move left and right everywhere, which is not good. It's like you go on the castle, you can go to every part of the castle and you get worried about it. So with the zero trust approach, we built something we call zero trust exchange, which is like a switchboard. A user comes to us. We verify who you are. We look at the policy. Is this user supposed to access this application? If the policy says yes, they get connected. If the policy says no, they're not connected. Everyone is untrusted. So your user sitting at home or office, it doesn't really matter. It is amazing security. And it reduces the attack surface because you're not exposing your applications to the open internet. Because if you do so, They can be discovered, they can be attacked. With zero trust, they're hiding behind our switchboard. So our customers have improved their security posture significantly with Zscaler technology, Zscaler platform.
So if you're the president moving into the White House and you bring your Peloton with you that's connected to the internet, that will protect the administration as well. So Jay, Zscaler released a 2020 State of Encryption Attacks report. Can you share with us what are some of the key findings and insights in that report?
At the highest level, encryption, what's called SSL encryption, is done. So your traffic going over the internet can't be snooped. So encryption is a good thing. But bad guys also hide behind the same encryption, so they can send you ransomware. It can't be detected. It is like when you go through the international airport, they want to inspect your luggage. Imagine if the luggage is put in a kind of steel case and the X-ray machine can't see it. So if 90% of luggage can't be seen, how happy or how comfortable will you be in flying? I won't be. 90% of traffic going over the internet is encrypted, and most of the traditional security devices can't open it and inspect it. So what we are highlighting is it's important to be able to inspect traffic for threats, because most of these threats are hiding behind encryption. And Zscaler purpose-built the technology where we can inspect that traffic to keep you safe from some of the most sophisticated threats.
So I understand SSL inspection, and that's really something that Zscaler does. What about other threats like ransomware? I mean, last year, 2020, there are so many ransomware attacks in the news that impacted K-12 school districts, entire hospital systems, city governments. What can the IT leaders and others who are with us today at this conference do to prevent their data from being held hostage?
So the number one step everyone needs to do is to make sure you have defenses. Think about international airport. If we need to keep the bad guys out, we have proper inspection of who is coming in, who is leaving the country, and this proper inspection of luggage being moved in and out. In the same way, when we go to the internet, we click on something, we download a file. If that file is malicious, it comes and infects our PC, and then it can actually encrypt the data and demand ransomware. So what's the best security around it? To make sure when the traffic is going to the internet, or when you're going or coming back from the internet, you must inspect, or you means the security service you have in place must inspect the traffic and block all the ransomware type of files that want to infect you. And that's where we come in. Zscaler has its inspection technology sitting in 150 data centers around the globe. So any traffic that goes in and out to the internet gets inspected, and the ransomware type of files, many times they are what we call zero-day files. That means no one has seen those files. It's hard to detect them. We got a technology called sandboxing technology that can run those files in a sandbox, and if they're malicious, we stop it. We have so many customers who have been sending us emails. I personally get lots of emails where the customer says, you have actually helped us. You have actually protected us against a lot of these threats. So what's the net? Use proper cloud-based security, because traditional security just isn't keeping up with the more sophisticated threats like ransomware.
You know, you mentioned the suitcase metaphor, and it reminds me that I was having a conversation with one of your customers, the CISO of a very large global airline, and also a large health provider that spoke with me at a conference. And they both shared that with all of us working from home, that they're having some challenges with making sure that they're helping to support and enable those employees to be productive, but yet enforcing security policy. And so one common issue came up is the ability to print. You know, a lot of users may be trying to send an email coming to their work, to their personal account, so they can print a document they need for their job. So there's always this healthy tension, Jay, between having too much security that's restrictive, but impacting business getting done. So what are your viewpoints of having security be part of a organization's digital transformation and balancing these two sometimes competing demands?
Yes, I think what you're talking about is some of the legacy technologies trying to do these things. If you build the right architecture, the way we build, for example, there is no difference between you sitting at home, at a coffee shop, or an airport. Whether you want to go to your application, the data center, or you want to go to a cloud-based application like Office 365, or an application in Azure or AWS and the like. It doesn't matter. You go through our switchboard. Our switchboard is the brains, which is our cloud data center, which allows you to direct the right traffic to right places, whether it's an internal application or external application. I can tell you that Zscaler customers had literally to do nothing when they moved from office to work from home. I have customers like Siemens who had 350,000 employees who actually moved to home in a matter of days without missing a beat. Today, I talked to the CIO of a very large government body out of UK. And he said that this was my first call with him in the past 10 months. He started the call, say, Jay, thank you. When COVID happened, everything went so smoothly, I had to do nothing. So the brief answer is, your legacy technologies can't be bandaged to do the right type of security and access in the world of cloud. You should look at the newer type of technologies that are built for the cloud.
And Laserfiche is in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. I see that Zscaler has been a leader there for many years, and probably the only leader, I believe, in the Magic Quadrant for secure web gateways. So, Jay, congratulations on that.
Thank you. I was surprised and happy to see that. We have been in the leaders quadrant for 10 years in a row, but this year we are the only leader. I don't recall having seen any MQ like that with single leader. So thanks to my engineering team and who has built such a great technology.
Well, Jay, we talked about your revenue growth last year. How are you recruiting talent and onboarding new employees in the middle of this pandemic?
Actually, the pandemic is helping us in many ways. First of all, we all become more open-minded that says people can work from anywhere. We have been a global company from day one. We have over 8 development centers. We got a couple of them in the US. We got development center in Vancouver. We got development centers in Europe and India. So by being able to have multiple centers of development, we are not restricted to really hiring some of the key engineering talent in the Bay Area, the Valley itself. The talent is available all over. That's point number one. Point number two, we were always designed to work from home, work from anywhere. That's how the company was started. So we have had a fair amount of talent that worked remotely in different places. So it hasn't been hard. The interview process had to change. For example, we hired a number of college grads. The interview process had to shift online, but it's working very well. To give you an idea, we are growing at a very rapid pace. Today, if I look back at 12 months in the past, about 38% of the people at Zscaler joined us in less than 12 months. That's a pace at which we're growing. And also the company's brand has become pretty well known after being a public company. So attracting talent is not that hard. Also, we work on the cool cloud security technologies, right? It's an intersection of cloud and security and mobility. And lots of people like to work in this hot new area.
Jay, though, even though it's cool, I got to tell you, there's still a huge shortfall of talent in the industry. One survey from Osaka, they published a 2020 State of Cybersecurity report, found that 62% of organizations' cybersecurity team is understaffed, and 57% currently have unfilled positions. So how are you finding talent? What are you doing to help address this industry shortfall of cybersecurity talent out there?
It is a real problem. Okay. The jobs needed are far more than the number of qualified people. We have a few programs with universities in New York University and Tandon School of Engineering. We have actually a joint program for training and helping. This is through the college for a program. That's one example. In India, we have a few programs and schools where we actually help them in the security education area. But I would say that many times we end up hiring students and end up training them for the first several months before they become productive. We're doing a little part, but I think all of us need to do a lot more to make sure there are far more people trained in this area.
I agree. I mean, Laserfiche is partnered with Cal State Long Beach here locally to help really get their cybersecurity applications miners started back in, I think, 2018 or so. So I encourage all of the audience members listening in to look for ways to partner with your local schools and universities to really give back and help get these programs off the ground. You know, Jay, earlier today at our conference, Ted Ross and Nicole Turner-Lee talked about digital equity and the very large problem of the growing digital divide that the pandemic has exposed. You know, women and minorities have been disproportionately impacted with job loss and income loss. So let me ask you, as a CEO of a company today, how do we get more women and more minorities interested in careers in cybersecurity and in STEM?
Yes, we need to do a lot more than it's being done. We are doing some of the things. For example, we have a program in our company called Women in IT, where we encourage women. Outside that, we have been doing a number of programs. We had our annual user conference called Zenith Live. We had a major session for women in IT, where we had speakers who were some of the very prominent and successful women, either as CIOs or as CSOs, who talked about their careers so other young aspiring women could learn from them. Similarly, from diversity point of view, also I think we can help if we don't really do everything in the Bay Area, because the country, we talk about the divide. Yes, Bay Area is almost a bubble. Okay, there's a lot bigger world out there. By having a presence, for example, in Atlanta, we got a development center there. Raleigh, North Carolina is a big center for us. And it's a lot easier actually to find diversity people from different backgrounds. And we're doing our part. And it's important. I personally take a lot of interest in it. We make sure when we hire in the recruiting team, we have women and diverse people with diverse background as a part of the interview process. All that helps.
Great. Well, Jay, thank you so much for being with us today here at Empower 2021. We really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us.
Thomas, thank you again. We appreciate the opportunity.
Next up is George Kurtz, co-founder and CEO of CrowdStrike. Welcome to our program, George.
It's a pleasure to be here.
When you created the company, what was your vision for the company back then, and how did that change over time? I know that you've got a very innovative next generation endpoint security platform to start that went from a signature-based technology back and then to more pattern-based today, and also incorporating AI ML. But how did your vision of the company shift over that time period?
Sure. Well, a big part of the focus was creating a platform that looked a lot more like Salesforce and a lot less like Siebel, and focus on the outcome of stopping breaches. And when we started the company, we don't rely on signatures. The old technologies where I came from, McAfee, do. Our whole goal was to collect data at scale, analyze that data, create AI algorithms on it, as well as behavioral patterns, and be able to identify never seen before attacks and be able to prevent those. So we started first in the security use case area, next-gen AV, endpoint detection response, et cetera. There's a bunch of other modules there. And then we've added things like threat intelligence. We've added security, IT hygiene, vulnerability management, 16 modules on the platform since we started the company from one module.
Sounds like there's been a lot of progress and a lot of innovation. You know, I remember back in 2011 that there were a lot of concerns around security, and especially security when it came to cloud platforms. And here you are launching a cloud-based platform that's focused on solving security issues. I'm curious, how did some of your customers initially respond when you approached them about this new innovative platform?
Well, the forward-looking customers embraced it. They knew the existing technologies weren't working. They were tired of signatures. They were tired of all the updates. They were tired of all the performance hogging impact it had on their systems. And they partnered with us, and we were able to continue to innovate and build great technology. Some of the older customers that were, I would say, laggards, initially resisted going to the cloud, but my response simply was, the cloud is much bigger than all of us, much bigger than security. And as you migrate your other applications to the cloud and embrace some of the hyperscalers that are out there, we'll be ready for you. And the reality is we've gotten a lot of initial customers who were a little bit reluctant are now some of our biggest customers because it was just a natural evolution for people to adopt the cloud.
You mentioned that initially some of the customers were a little bit laggards. We still have some companies and some organizations and some industries that are still a little bit conservative and are reluctant to make that pivot to the cloud. What would you say to them to help incentivize them to really start looking at innovating cloud first and also protecting their endpoints and their data and their people, looking at security technologies like yours, for example?
I think they're going to have to go through a digital transformation or they're not going to be in a competitive position. So if they're going to be driving towards a digital transformation, which is looking at newer architectures, leveraging the cloud, leveraging SaaS services, almost by definition, you're going to have a security transformation. You're not going to just take what you have done in the past or try to take legacy technologies and jam them into the cloud and hope they work. So from that standpoint, embracing something like CrowdStrike and our Falcon platform, whether it's on-prem, whether it's a hybrid environment, whether it's just in the cloud for workloads, I think is important. I mean, just to give you an idea, on a daily basis, CrowdStrike protects 1 billion containers every day. And those are containers that come and go. Those are ephemeral containers, but that's a big part of our strategy, and making sure that customers have a secure journey to make that digital transformation is a key part of our strategy.
So now that we've all settled down into working remotely, CIOs are more focused than ever on cybersecurity. According to one survey from the Center for Digital Government, George, cybersecurity and budget and cost control were the two highest priorities in 2021. So let me ask you, how do security and IT leaders balance these two priorities that seem conflicting, especially if you're in local government and you've seen declining tax revenues because of the pandemic?
Well, I think that's an area that's really hard to skimp on is security. When you look at where we are today, particularly for local governments, it isn't about having one computer that's infected and it's an annoyance and you have to go clean it up. It's about having an entire school district down or entire city down, 911 system down, right? So it's really about business resiliency. And if you can't operate your business, then what else matters? And I think security has really pushed itself to the forefront of board discussions and certainly state, local, and federal governments that because of the way the adversaries work, whether it's a nation state or an e-crime actor, they're impacting the resiliency and the operational effectiveness of these systems. So yes, there's got to be a balance. I mean, there's not unlimited spending, but you need to spend the right amount of money to protect the resources that you have. And then it becomes really a risk management decision on what you spend and where you spend it.
Yeah, I know that one city last year was subject to a ransomware attack that impacted the systems you just mentioned. I think they were asked to pay about 13 Bitcoins in ransom, but instead they spent about $18 million on security remediation activities. So what you says rings true for a lot of organizations. Let's talk about the SolarWinds attack that was disclosed in December of last year that really shook up the industry. And it's been reported that hackers first accessed SolarWinds in September of 2019. And I heard that CrowdStrike has been involved with SolarWinds in the investigation. Can you share with us any insights that have been publicly shared about the root cause for the attack and about the Sunspot malware and the Sunburst backdoors that CrowdStrike identified?
Well, talk at a high level, obviously, some privileged information that we're dealing with, but we have been able and gotten approval to put some things out publicly, which is off our website. We wrote a blog on some very specific malware that was found on build servers. And I think in general, what I would say, certainly it's a very sophisticated adversary with lots of time and money and resources to be able to plan out these attacks and be very good in their tradecraft and not reusing different indicators, not reusing infrastructure, using malware only when it was needed. And more importantly, what we saw is really the abuse of identity. And this is why identity and understanding who's on your system and is it really them is really important. And it's actually one of the things that we focus on at CrowdStrike as well, because these average users were just blending in. Unfortunately, it was the adversary, but they look like average users. So in many of the attacks in the past, you would see admin accounts being abused and bouncing around the network and various resources. In this particular case, the malware was only used when needed. And once the identity and credentials were stolen, those identity and credentials could be used. And, we saw the stealing of things like SAML tokens to abuse the Microsoft technology. And there's a lot of complexity and, in my opinion, risk associated with Active Directory on-prem and as well as in the cloud. And those very fragile interactions were being abused. So it's a concern of a lot of customers that are using Microsoft and on-prem and cloud directory services. And we even put out a tool to be able to look into those resources and how they're configured, just to make sure there's no additional risk to those customers.
So George, what lessons can we learn from SolarWinds about managing supply chain risks?
Well, supply chain risk is a really difficult area, particularly with security. We've seen successful attacks like the one you mentioned, as well as some prior ones from future years. NotPetya actually was a supply chain attack, I think, from 2017, which happened to leverage some tax software from the Ukraine. And it's very difficult. So I think there's a couple of things. As a company, it's important to understand your vendors and who you're working with, and ask the right questions. Many of the vendors, particularly cloud ones, have certain levels of certification, SOC 2, things of that nature, which can be helpful. Understanding their practices, and then also realizing that having visibility on your endpoints and workloads is going to be important, because even if there is a piece of software that has some malware in it that as it goes undetected, the adversary is still going to have to do something. They're going to have to move around, get data, become other users, and you want to be able to identify that sort of activity as quickly as you can. So I always like to say almost any big company is going to have an incident. You just don't want it to turn into a breach.
George, you talked about moving from signature-based to pattern-based. What are some trends and other changes you anticipate will happen in the cybersecurity landscape over the next few years?
Well, I think from a cybersecurity landscape perspective, we're going to continue to see very sophisticated attacks. And I think a big part of understanding these attacks is really leveraging copious amounts of data and kind of the next generation of AI. I think we're a pioneer in that area, but we're still in the early stages of really leveraging artificial intelligence, and applying that to all sorts of data sets is going to be really important. And, I think that's going to be something that not only CrowdStrike, but the industry will be focused on.
As we wrap up, I know a lot of organizations are still trying to figure out what happens next as they navigate this pandemic. And there's been an exodus of employees from Silicon Valley. And I believe, George, you shared earlier that many of your employees are working remotely anyway. What do you see as the future of work, and what do you see as the new normal, hopefully later on this year?
Well, I know what it's not going to be, which is where we were at, right? It's not going to be just everyone in the office. I think it'll be a hybrid model, which is really focused on flexibility for people working almost from anywhere, clustering of offices where they could actually go into an office and maybe it's once a week, or maybe it's once every 2 weeks, or a couple times a week. They have a home base, more of a Starbucks meeting area to collaborate. But there's a lot of people who can work from home, like to work from home, and it's been positive for them. And we've seen a lot of other companies who are always focused on you have to be in the office, go to a much more flexible work environment.
Well, thank you, George, for your insights today. We really appreciate you being with us here at Empower 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much.